Alright, so I figured I'd do something a little different there today. I'm going to take a few minutes and just go over some of the basics for Rockabilly Slap bass. It's not something I've been doing for a particularly long time, so I may not be the foremost authority to speak on it. But I figure with everything I've learned up till this point, any knowledge that I could possibly pass on can't be a bad thing, right? So, yeah, we're not going to focus on left hand at all, so if you need information on that, another video would be your best bet. This one we're just going to talk primarily about right hand technique and just things like general setup for slapping, like string height, string type, stuff like that. So, here we go. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about are strings. Now, like with any other stringed instrument, there are many different types available for the upright bass, and some do work better for slapping than others. Your most common type are steel strings, which you can slap if you choose to, but especially if you're just starting, I wouldn't recommend it, because they are a very high tension in comparison to other types of strings, and they're pretty hard on your fingers. They also have a much harsher sound in comparison to other types of strings. Not really great for the rockabilly tone, but again, that's just my opinion. You can do whatever you wish. The other type of strings, or one of the other types of strings, are gut strings. Now for the rockabilly sound, that is kind of the way to go. They get that warm, clicky, percussive sound, and it's great. However, they do have drawbacks. They're very expensive, usually between $200 to $500 a set, depending on where you are. They're very sensitive to temperature and humidity changes, and they tend to not last very long. But if you want the authentic tone and feel, then guts would be the way to go. Now, there are also many different types of nylon strings, which is what I have on my bass right now. These are synthetic gut strings, made by a company called Slap Happy Weed Whackers. This is their premium set. I'll get to what weed whackers are in a second. These are nylon wrap. The E and the A are a steel core, and the D and the G are a Kevlar core. They're a medium tension, so they're relatively easy to slap, especially in comparison to steels. And they have that nice, warm, percussive rockabilly sound to them. But because of the medium tension, they're also great for like pizzicato playing, other types of plucking. They're a good all-around string, and the price is right. These, for me, after shipping, were $80. So, that's my go-to string. Now, the last one I want to touch on are weed whackers. What the hell are weed whackers? These are weed whackers. And you can see how they got their name, because they look like trimmer line for a weed whacker. Now, if you're doing primarily slap playing, like 90-95% slap playing, and you're either mic'd up or you're using a pickup, there's nothing wrong with these strings at all. They would be the way to go. If you want to do any kind of plucking or any other playing aside from slap, or if you're not going to be mic'd up, I wouldn't really recommend these, because they are very, very low tension. So you don't really get too much tone out of them, especially if you're not slapping them. However, like I said, if you're slapping more often than you're not, and if you're mic'd up, or even if you're just learning to slap, these are perfect. And they're dirt cheap. These, for me, were $30 after shipping. So, yeah, if you want to try out, like I said, a weed whackers, just for the slap, go for it. There's nothing wrong with them, despite what people will tell you. So, yeah, that's all for strings. Let's move on. Alright, so the last thing I want to touch on here before we start actually playing is the height of the strings off of your fingerboard. For slapping, you generally want your strings to be decently high in comparison to, say, a jazz bass. The reason for this is because the slapping technique involves pulling the string. If your strings are very low, it's going to be very difficult to do that. So you can see here and kind of get an idea of how high my strings are. It's all personal preference. but this is just to give you an example of what I do. Now most basses, newer basses especially, will have fully adjustable bridges with these two thumb wheels here. If you don't have that, you have a couple of choices. You can either go out and get a new bridge that's either a solid bridge that's cut higher, or a bridge like this with the thumb wheels, or you can get little wooden shims, just small pieces of wood, and put them under the feet of the bridge to get the action where you want it. So yeah, it's something that you can play around with, whatever suits you, whatever feels right, whatever sounds good. This is just an example. Alright, so let's get slapping. First of all, I'll cover the most basic of basic things, the single slap. All this involves is grabbing the string, letting it slap back against the fingerboard. Now, you can do this however you want, but I'll show you how I do it. As you can see by these blood blisters, these are primarily the fingers that I use. Sometimes together, sometimes separately. It varies. But come in like this and pull. Give it a slap. So we'll show you what that sounds like with, we'll do a walking bass line in D. Alright, so next we'll go over the double slap. Now, for this, we're going to come in the exact same way we did for our single slap. We're going to pull the string, let it slap back against the fingerboard, and then we're going to give it a little smack with our palm, like this. A good way to get this down is to just use open strings, just like a root 5 pattern. Just like that. And just do that until you get the feel for it. It's all about feel. I'll show you how that sounds with the walking bass line in D. Okay, next, the triple slap. Now this is a bit more advanced, so don't rush it. That's the most important thing, well, with any instrument, but especially with this, don't rush it. Take your time and get it down. Trust me, it's well worth it. The triple slap. We're going to come in, same as with the previous two. We're going to slap our string, and then we're going to hit, hit. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Like that. I'll show you how it sounds in combination with the other two. Okay, next I want to cover probably my favorite slapping technique. It's the Hillbilly Slap. Now you'll recognize this from scores of old country and rockabilly tunes. It's yeah, it's a hell of a lot of fun, and you can fit it in so many places, which is awesome. So we'll do like a root 5 pattern in A. So without the slap, that's just A and E, just. So what we're going to do is for each note, we're going to single slap and then hit it twice. Okay, so until your arm falls off. Alright, so this is a tricky one. It's one that I don't fully understand still, to be honest with you. This is the drag triplet. It's a very cool little one to have in your arsenal of licks, but it's very tricky to get down pat. You kind of look at it as an inside-out triple slap. Now what I mean by that is, triple slap that we already went over is pull, slap, slap. You remember that? Drag triplet is basically, you hit it twice and then pull, but all in one motion. Again, it's tricky. I still don't fully understand it, so it's hard to show. It's one of those ones where you almost have to just do it till it clicks type thing. But basically, and it's hard to show it slow, but it's one motion, just boom, boom, boom. Kind of like that. Well, that's about all I got. There's a lot more that I could touch on and I could talk about here, but like I said at the start, I'm not exactly the premier authority on slap bass playing, so I don't want to babble on too much. I hope the video was helpful, if only just a little bit. There's a whole host of fantastic videos out there on this. My hope is just to pass on a little bit of knowledge. Again, if only a little bit. It's a great instrument, it really is, and the slapping technique is a hell of a lot of fun. It's probably my favorite instrument that I've picked up so far. Yeah, so just keep in mind, if you're just starting out, don't get discouraged. It does take a while to get down, but it's well worth it. Well worth it. And there are no limitations to it. Nothing's really set in stone. So use your imagination, be creative, and just keep playing. Alright, till next time, take care.